Hello, my name is Christina Annabelle. I'm a fire technology transfer specialist with Human Performance and Innovation in Organizational Learning, or as you may know us, HP and IOL. I'm going to provide a brief overview of condition mapping, why we do it, and how we do it. Condition mapping, also known as network of influences mapping, is a technique used to identify the interactions, circumstances, and cues that shape the acts and assessments of participants leading up to a key decision or action. Another way to think about it is identifying those things that influenced a person or a team's actions or decisions. Most often, this technique is used to help others understand the events that led up to a negative outcome incident. However, it can also be used to assess the events that occurred during normal work operations. The intent of condition mapping is to move beyond just what happened to why something happened. If we stop the learning process once we have discovered what happened, we leave a lot of learning on the table. For example, if we know that someone burned their hand while mopping up on a fire, and we discover that they were not wearing gloves at the time, we might conclude that they burned themselves because they were not wearing gloves. We then tell everyone to wear gloves while mopping up. Problem solved, right? Wrong. We all know we should be wearing gloves while on a fire, yet most of us are probably guilty of not wearing them when required. Focusing on the what limits us to single loop learning. We're staying within the confines of established rules and regulations. This wouldn't have happened if the person had worn gloves like our policy says we should. So, what if, instead, we move past the what and ask ourselves, why wasn't the person wearing gloves? Were they cold trailing? We often teach our firefighters to have one glove on and one glove off to better feel for heat sources. What about comfort? Government-issued gloves are really uncomfortable and often don't fit properly, making dexterity in some tasks an issue. If we had stopped at the what, we wouldn't have learned about these more system-level issues, such as situational limitations or the general ill fit of the gloves. By honing in on the why, we move past single-loop learning to double-loop learning, where we can begin to assess the system that a person is operating in, as well as any deeply held assumptions and beliefs. Moving past assessing whether a person followed the rules to whether the rules themselves are adequate. This is what condition mapping aims to do. So what does condition mapping look like? Condition mapping begins once all of the information regarding an incident or subject is gathered and a coherent narrative or summary has been written. There are three basic steps to condition mapping. First, key decisions and actions are identified. These are usually key points within the proceedings of an event that highly influence the outcome. In our previous example, the act of not wearing gloves could be considered a key decision or action. Once these have been identified, the next step is to put yourself in the participant's shoes and ask why it made sense to the participants to make that key decision or action as a means to identifying the conditions that influence them. These conditions can be anything from environmental influences to social or political pressures. They can be relational issues or system-based incentives, like taking a risky assignment because it means your crew will get some overtime hours. Here are a few questions that you can ask yourself when attempting to understand why a decision or action was made. What knowledge did the participants have and how did they apply it? What were the participants trying to achieve? What did they know? What did they not know? Were there any goal conflicts? What factors influenced the participants' risk tolerance? What physical and environmental conditions influenced the event? Once a team has identified all of the conditions of influence they can, the final step is to evaluate the conditions of influence in search of commonalities, themes, or trends between the conditions. Sounds complicated, right? Actually, it's not. Condition mapping is about the final product, not necessarily about how you get there. There is more than one way to skin this cat. Some people prefer to use the sticky note technique. In this technique, conditions of influence are written on sticky notes that can be stuck to a wall or table. Once conditions have been identified, the team can then move the sticky notes around into like groups or color code the sticky notes to identify trends. Others prefer to use computer software such as PowerPoint, where conditions can be arranged on slides and then color or shape coded to identify themes. For more complex events, some have used mind mapping software that can help evaluate and visually portray the themes for you. Still others may use timelines or lists as a jumping off point. While I have provided you with a few examples of how condition mapping is conducted, I encourage you to find a process that works for you and your team. The process you use doesn't have to be one that we covered in this video. You can develop your own. The most important thing is that at the end of the process, you have a better understanding of why a decision or action was made and how it was influenced.